It appears right now, if one party's confident, it's the Republicans. But talk about what happens in general on election night, whether you're in a campaign or at a party committee. If your party looks like you're not going to do well, you need to develop talking points and spin. How does that work during the night? What happens?
The talking points and spin, first of all, don't start tonight. They've started before. We have not, thank goodness, but they have been developed by the other side because the writing was kind of on the wall with the president's approval.
Fred, are you into denial before it, like McCain? Oh, wait, did you know it was going to happen? Or just say, maybe they're just all wrong?
You always have the maybe. There's always some bizarre miracle out there.
That's right. So early spin, tonight we saw a headline, the White House is already distancing itself from losing candidates, which is not the right spin, but it's pretty bad spin nonetheless. The pundits and party people work on their talking points. The candidates, as Fred pointed out, you always believe and think you can win. And we've seen many elections that have come out different than the final result. I ran in a tough year in 2008. But we certainly weren't ahead in the polls, but certainly believe there's an opportunity. I remember coming home after 12 hours at the polls, took a quick shower, got a few early returns. It was probably 7:45, 8:15. And I know the state. I looked at those, talked to my campaign staff, and said, "No, we're not going to win." And he said, "Absolutely." And you just.
And then he blamed his bad ad.
He had a lame West Coast ad maker who didn't understand the craggy people of New Hampshire.
But he's a great guy.
Let me ask the two of you, because you know the president and his current and people around him. Who will he rely on tonight and tomorrow to figure out how to address this? Is it the people who are there now? Is it the two of you, David Axelrod? Who will he rely on to figure out what's the right message? Because we saw with George Bush and Bill Clinton after their midterm defeats, you need a message. You need to say something.
Well, he's got a team at the White House that's pretty competent, and he's going to lean on them very heavily. Jen Palmieri, Dan Pfeiffer. I think he's going to work very closely with them, and he'll probably still call some of his old friends who are out there around the country. But I think for the most part, he's going to rely on the people around him. And right now, he's out there watching the results come in, and he's probably thinking about what this means.
Always watching ESPN, John.
No, never watches cable.
And Mark, the reality is that. There are a lot of races out here where I think they're just going to have to count the votes. I'm reminded of a very bad experience I had in John's state in 1996 when I did a Senate race for a guy named Dick Sweat, who was named the winner in exit polls. You may recall.
He was declared the winner?
He was declared the winner early in the evening.
He was declared to have the worst name in the history of American politics.
I was thinking that.
In 2008.
No, and he overcame that to actually win the exit polls handily, if I will say that.
Somebody mentioned a moment ago that the White House is sort of distancing itself from these losing candidates. That's not a very smart thing to do, is it?
Well, I want to cut Josh Earnest a little slack here because, he gets asked while the polls are still open about these candidates. And, of course, he wants to give the candidates the distance from the president that they've been trying to establish in this entire campaign. Anything he says in that circumstance ends up on the news that evening and potentially hurts candidates. So I want to give them a little slack. The real question is, what do they say tomorrow? And what does the president say tomorrow?
In 2008, there was a documentary on the first Obama campaign. And the movie starts with the president and Robert Gibbs watching the returns come in, and they've got a binder like this one, and the president's going through it. This is 2006, of course. And he's going through, and he's like, boy, I love elections when I'm not on the ballot. Yeah. I bet that is probably not the feeling inside the White House right now.
So two people also on the ballot tonight, the Clintons. They campaign widely. Republicans now sent me an email kind of chortling saying, well, the Clintons are 0 for 1. They lost in Kentucky. And if you look at where they campaigned, in Arkansas, in Georgia and North Carolina, they may not have a great night. Does that matter?
Okay, I want to go on the record and say no. Okay,
surrogates
are not on the ballot. The Clintons were not on the ballot. I have to say that, they did yeoman's work out there, but the reality is that this isn't a referendum on the Clintons. This was an election between two candidates.
And as Reince Priebus said, you need a good team on the field. All a surrogate really does is give attention to the candidate in their message. No one's going to vote for a candidate because Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or President President George W. Bush said, vote for this candidate.
That's not how it's reported typically.
It isn't. No, because the media has never really been inside a real campaign. But it gives attention to the candidate and the message. And if it's a strong candidate and the right message, then it resonates with the voters. If you don't have good material to start with, it really doesn't make a difference, and you can't blame the surrogate.
And, this cycle, a lot of these, both party committees got mostly the candidates that they wanted in each one of these races. And so the candidates really do matter. And you didn't have a lot of Todd Aikens this time around. Who's the woman in Delaware? And they didn't have the same kind of gaffes. So they did a good job picking the candidates and putting the strongest possible team on the field.